On the galactic trade hub of Varelli's Prime, the air always smelled like rust and burnt sugar. Neon signs flickered above alleyways where deals were made in whispers and broken with knives. The city floated in the upper rings of a gas giant, tethered to nothing but ambition and greed. Ships from 100 worlds docked here, spilling out merchants, mercenaries, and misfits. Most kept their heads down, but one girl walked like she owned the sky. Her name was Lila. She was tall for a human, but lean like a blade. Her skin was pale, almost silver under the artificial lights, and her eyes held a stillness that made even hardened spacers look away. Her ears tapered to delicate points, not quite elven, not quite human, but something in between. Rumors said she came from a Deathworld, a planet so cruel it killed 90% of its children before they reached 10. Those who survived were not people anymore. They were storms wearing skin. At her side, coiled around her forearm like a living bracelet, was her companion. Kyle was small for a dragon, no bigger than a house cat, but his presence made the air hum. His scales were black as void space, shimmering with hints of violet when the light caught them just right. His eyes glowed faintly like embers under ash. He never growled, never hissed. He simply watched, and when he blinked, it felt like time slowed. They had arrived 3 days ago on a battered freighter that smelled of ozone and regret. Lila paid her passage in silence, offering no name, no origin, no story. The captain, a grizzled Xanther with 3 cybernetic eyes, tried to press her for credits. She stared at him until he backed away, muttering about bad omens. Since then, she had wandered the lower spires, buying dried rations and clean water, never speaking unless spoken to. And even then she answered in single words. The lower spires were where the unwanted lived, refugees, criminals, and those too poor to climb higher. The gravity here was weaker, making movement floaty and strange. The walls sweated condensation and the lights buzzed like angry insects. Yet Lila moved through it all with calm precision, as if the chaos around her was nothing more than background noise. Word of her spread quickly, a human girl with pointed ears, a dragon on her arm, no weapons, no armor, no fear. Some said she was a spy from the silent fleets. Others claimed she was a ghost returned from a dead colony. A few even whispered she was the last of an ancient bloodline, hidden away during the Great Purges. But none dared approach her, except one. His name was Brant, a low-level enforcer for the Arena Syndicate. He wore a patched-up exosuit and carried a shock baton that crackled with cheap energy. He found Lila near a food stall, watching a vendor fry spiced grubs and recycled oil. Brant stepped in front of her, blocking her view. Newcomers pay tribute, he said, voice rough from too many stimpaks. Standard rule. 10 credits or a day in the pits. Lila looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, just looked. Her eyes were like frozen lakes, clear, deep, and impossible to read. Kale shifted slightly on her arm, his tail curling tighter. I have no credits, she said. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the market noise like a knife through silk. Then you fight, Brant said, smirking. The pits are always hungry. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She simply nodded once and followed him through the winding alleys, past rusted vents and flickering hollow ads. The crowd parted as they passed. Some pointed. Others crossed the street to avoid her shadow. The arena was not grand. It was a sunken bowl carved into the station's underbelly, lined with cracked durasteel and stained with old blood. The air reeked of sweat, ozone, and something metallic, fear maybe, or desperation. Hundreds of spectators sat on rusted benches, shouting bets and jeering at the fighters below. Spotlights swept the pit, catching glints of fang, claw, and blade. Brant led her to the registration booth, a grimy kiosk manned by a bored clerk with too many facial piercings. Name, the clerk said, not looking up. Lila, species human. Origin, she paused, then said, Earth. The clerk finally looked up. His eyes widened slightly. Earth, the death world. He swallowed. You sure? She nodded. He typed something into his datapad, fingers trembling just a little. You're scheduled for tomorrow. First match at dawn. Win 3 rounds, you're free. Lose once, you belong to the syndicate. She didn't react, just turned and walked toward the holding cells, small windowless rooms where fighters waited before their matches. The door hissed shut behind her. The room was bare except for a cot and a water dispenser. Kale uncoiled from her arm and stretched, his wings flaring for a moment before folding back against his body. You did not have to agree, he said. His voice was low, melodic, like wind through ancient trees. Only those bound by honor or foolishness walk into the pit without a plan. Lila sat on the cot, back straight, hands resting on her knees. They would have forced me anyway. Better to choose the time. Cale tilted his head. You could have run, and go where the Syndicate owns every port from here to the outer rim. Running only delays the fight. It does not end it. The dragon sighed, a puff of warm smoke curling from his nostrils. You are too much like your mother, always walking into fire. Lila's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes just for a second. She said nothing. Outside, the station hummed with its endless rhythm. Ships came and went. Lives were bought and sold. But in that small cell, time felt different. Slower. Heavier. The next morning, the guards came. They didn't speak. Just opened the door and gestured for her to follow. The crowd was already gathering, louder than before. Word had spread. A Deathworlder was fighting. Not a gladiator, not a beast, but a girl with silver eyes and a dragon on her shoulder. Her opponent was a Krellian berserker, 4-armed and 7 feet tall, his skin reinforced with bioplating. His name was Groktar, and he had torn 3 fighters apart the week before. He roared as he entered the pit, slamming his fists together, sending sparks flying from his knuckle spikes. Lila walked in barefoot. No armor, no weapon, just her simple tunic and Cale perched calmly on her left shoulder. The crowd booed. Some threw rotten fruit. It hit the ground before reaching her. The bell rang. Groktar charged like a runaway freighter, all muscle and rage. Lila didn't move. At the last second, she stepped aside, just enough, and let his momentum carry him past. He skidded, turned, and charged again. This time, she sidestepped and brushed her fingers against his neck. A tiny movement. Almost gentle. The berserker stopped, blinked, then dropped to his knees, gasping. Foam bubbled at his mouth. His arms twitched, then went still. The medics rushed in, but it was too late. He was alive, but paralyzed. The judges conferred. No visible injury. No strike landed. Yet the opponent could not continue. By the rules, it was a forfeit. Lila won. The crowd fell silent. Even the vendors stopped shouting. They had expected blood. Instead, they got silence, and something far more unsettling. Lila turned and walked back to her cell, Cale's claws clicking softly against her shoulder. She didn't look at the crowd. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. She simply walked as if nothing had happened. But in the high balconies, unseen eyes watched, and one man, cloaked in dark armor, leaned forward with interest. His name was Dax Torvin, champion of the Iron Ring, slayer of Xenos, and now perhaps challenger of Deathworlders. He had seen many fighters, many killers, but never someone who won without throwing a single punch. He smiled, not a kind smile, the kind that meant blood was coming. And far below in her cell, Lila closed her eyes. She knew he was watching. She had counted on it. The real fight had not even begun. The morning after her first match, the lower spires of Virelli's Prime buzzed with a new kind of tension. Whispers followed Lila like shadows. Some called her a ghost. Others said she carried a curse. A few even claimed she was not human at all, but something older, something that had watched empires rise and fall from the dark between stars. None of it mattered to her. She sat on the edge of her cot, sharpening a sliver of bone she had pulled from her boot lining. It was not a weapon. Not really. Just a tool. Like silence. Like stillness. Cale lay coiled on the floor, eyes half closed, wings folded tight. He had not slept. Dragons did not sleep like humans. They drifted, aware even in rest. He had heard the footsteps outside the cell, light, hesitant, then gone. Guards, spies, maybe both. You should eat, he said, voice low. Lila shook her head. Not yet. You fought well yesterday, but they will send worse today. I know. She tucked the bone sliver back into her boot and stood. Her tunic was clean, though worn. No blood stained it, no sweat. She moved to the water dispenser and drank slowly, eyes fixed on the wall as if it held secrets only she could see. Outside, the station groaned like a living thing. Metal expanded and contracted with the heat of passing ships. Alarms chirped in the distance, routine malfunctions ignored by all. But beneath it all, a new sound grew, the steady drum of boots on grating. More spectators, more bets, more blood expected. The door hissed open. 2 guards stood there, taller than before, armored in dull gray plating. No words. Just a nod toward the corridor. Lila followed without hesitation. Cale leapt onto her shoulder, claws gentle against her collarbone. As they walked, the air grew thicker, heavier, as if the station itself held its breath. The arena was packed, every bench filled. Vendors sold glow drinks and nerve stim tabs. Holoboards flashed odds. Groktar had been 10-1. Now Lila was listed as a favorite, though no one knew why. She had done nothing. That was the problem. In a place built on violence, calm was the most terrifying thing of all. Her second opponent waited in the center of the pit. Not a berserker this time. Not a brute. This one was lean, fast, and covered in tattoos that shifted color with his mood. A razorjack from the outer colonies, trained in nerve strike combat, pressure point disruption, and silent kills. His name was Velo. He carried no weapon. He didn't need one. His fingers ended in sharpened bone implants filed to needle points. He watched Lila approach, eyes narrow. Most fighters strutted, roared, flexed. She walked like she was heading to a market stall. That unnerved him more than any war cry. The bell rang. Velo moved first, a blur of motion, darting left then right, testing her reaction. Lila stood still. He feinted a strike to her throat. She didn't flinch. He lunged for her ribs, stopped inches away when Kale exhaled a thin stream of smoke directly into his face. It was not fire, not poison, just smoke. But it smelled of burnt pine and something ancient, something that made Velo's instincts scream. He stumbled back, blinking, his tattoos flashing red with alarm. Lila stepped forward. One step, then another. Slow, deliberate. Velo circled, trying to find an opening, but there was none. Her posture was open, relaxed, yet every muscle was coiled like a spring. She wasn't waiting to defend. She was waiting for him to make a mistake. And he did. He struck again, faster this time, aiming for the nerve cluster behind her ear. But Lila turned her head just enough that his fingers grazed empty air. In that split second, she brushed the back of his hand with her fingertips. A light touch. Barely there. Velo froze, his eyes widened. His breath hitched. He looked down at his hand as if seeing it for the first time. Then he dropped to his knees, trembling. His tattoos dimmed to gray. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Medics rushed in, scanning him with handheld devices. Their faces paled. Neurotoxin, one whispered. Airborne. Trace levels. How they carried him away, limp but breathing. Another forfeit. Another win for the Deathworlder girl. The crowd did not cheer. They murmured, uneasy, confused. This was not entertainment. This was something else. Something quiet and sharp and wrong. Lila turned and walked back to her cell. Same path, same pace. But this time the guards did not meet her at the door. Instead, a new figure stood there. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat lined with circuitry. His face was scarred, one eye replaced with a red-lensed AUG. He did not block her path, just watched. You're not here for the credits, he said. Lila stopped, looked at him. No. Then why she held his gaze for 3 full seconds, then said, I'm waiting for someone. He nodded slowly, as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. He stepped aside. She passed without another word. Back in the cell, Kale uncoiled and stretched. 2 matches, 2 wins. No blood spilled. No real fight. They are starting to fear you. Good, Lila said. Fear is quieter than rage. You could leave now. Slip out through the waste tunnels. Catch a smuggler's barge and let them think they won by default. No. They challenged me. Now they must see what that means. Kale tilted his head. You are not just waiting for any challenger. You are waiting for him. She did not answer, but her fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the cot. Dax Torvin, champion of the Iron Ring, undefeated in 73 matches. He did not fight for sport. He fought to break spirits, to prove that no one was beyond conquest. He had crushed warlords, alien priests, even a sentient war machine. All of them broke. All of them begged. Lila had seen his matches on public feeds. She knew his style. Relentless. Brutal. Theatrical. He wanted his enemies to suffer before they fell. He wanted the crowd to remember his name long after the blood dried. But Lila had grown up on a world where pain was a teacher, not a weapon, where silence spoke louder than screams, where survival was not about strength but about reading the wind, the soil, the breath of your enemy. She was not afraid of him. That afternoon, a message came, not spoken, not written, just left on the floor outside her door. A single black feather, edged with silver. Torvin's mark, his way of saying he had seen enough. He would fight her next. The Syndicate approved it immediately. A Deathworlder versus the Iron Champion. The ultimate spectacle. Tickets sold out in minutes. Even high-rank officials from the orbital spires requested front-row seats. Lila did not react. She washed her face, combed her hair with her fingers, checked the bone sliver in her boot. Then she sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slow and deep. Kale watched her. You do not plan to kill him. No, then what I plan to make him understand. Understand what? That some things cannot be conquered. Some beings do not fight to win. They fight to show others the edge of their own limits. Kale was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Your mother tried the same thing. With the Hive King. Remember what happened?" Lila's jaw tightened. "I remember." She opened her eyes. They were colder now, sharper, but still calm. "This is not the Hive King. This is a man who thinks violence is the only language. I will speak to him in silence, and he will hear it." Night fell over Varelli's prime. The lights dimmed in the lower spires. The arena emptied, but guards remained, patrolling the corridors with new urgency. Rumors spread that Torvin had already entered the station, that he walked the halls at night testing his axes on steel posts. Lila slept, or seemed to. Kale knew better. Her mind was awake, mapping the fight. The angles, the breaths, the moment. Dawn came too soon. The guards returned. This time they did not lead her to the pit. They took her to the preparation chamber, a small room behind the arena floor where fighters oiled their armor or said last prayers. Torvin was already there, sharpening his plasma axes with a whetstone that sparked with every stroke. He looked up as she entered. His eyes were dark, hungry. He wore no helmet. Wanted her to see his face when he broke her. "You're smaller than I thought," he said, "and you're louder." He chuckled. "Good. I like spirit. Makes the breaking sweeter." Lila said nothing. She walked to the opposite wall and leaned against it, arms crossed. Kale shifted on her shoulder, eyes locked on Torvin. "You know what happens if you lose," he said. "You become my property. You're dragon too. I'll mount his skull above my throne." Lila finally looked at him. "You talk too much." His smile faded. "The bell will ring in 10 minutes. Be ready. I've been ready." She closed her eyes again. Not in fear, not in prayer. In focus outside, the crowd roared. The greatest match in arena history was about to begin. And in that quiet room between a Deathworlder girl and a champion who thought himself a god, the real war had already started. The preparation chamber felt colder than it should. Metal walls sweated condensation, and the air smelled of oil and old blood. Dax Torvin stood near the center, rolling his shoulders, testing the balance of his twin plasma axes. Each hummed softly, their edges glowing faint blue from stored energy. He wore light combat armor, black, segmented, built for speed and show. His augury flickered as it scanned Lila, running threat assessments she could not see but could feel. She remained against the far wall, unmoving. Her eyes were open now, fixed on the floor just in front of her feet. Kale sat on her shoulder, tail curled around her neck like a living scarf. His breathing was slow, steady, calm, a contrast to the tension thickening the room. "You really think silence will save you?" Torvin said. His voice was low, almost conversational, but edged with steel. Lila did not look up. "Silence does not save. It reveals," he snorted. "Pretty words. But the pit does not care for poetry. Only pain. Pain is just noise," she said. "And noise fades." Torvin stepped forward, boots clicking on the grating. "You killed 2 men without lifting a hand. That's not fighting. That's trickery. They are not dead," she corrected. "They chose to stop. That is their right." He laughed, short and sharp. "In my ring, there is no stopping, only breaking." "Then you have never truly fought," she said. His eye pulsed red. "Maybe not, but I have won. Every time. Winning is not the same as understanding," she said. "You beat bodies, not minds." He stopped a few feet away, stared at her. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not doubt, but curiosity. "Who are you, just a girl from a world that eats the weak for breakfast? And your dragon, my brother. My shadow, my memory." Torvin glanced at Kale. The dragon met his gaze without blinking. "Most beasts flinch under my stare. He does not. He is not a beast." "Then what is he? Something that remembers when stars were young." Torvin said nothing for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back to his corner. The bell will ring soon. I will not hold back. I would be disappointed if you did. The door hissed open. A guard appeared. Time. Torvin nodded, hefting his axes. Lila pushed off the wall and followed, barefoot. Kale steady on her shoulder. They walked side by side down the short corridor that led to the arena floor. The roar of the crowd grew louder with every step. Thousands of voices shouting, betting, chanting Torvin's name. The moment they stepped into the light, the noise doubled. Spotlights pinned them in place. Torvin raised his axes and the crowd erupted. Lila simply walked to the center of the pit and stopped. She did not bow, did not gesture, just stood, hands at her sides, eyes on the ground. The announcer's voice boomed from hidden speakers. Citizens of Virelli's Prime, you have come to witness history. On one side, the Iron Champion, Slayer of Xenos, Breaker of Wills, undefeated in 73 matches. Dax Torvin cheers shook the stands, and on the other, a mystery. A Deathworlder, no name but Lila. No weapon, no armor. Yet she has already claimed 2 forfeits without striking a blow. What is she? Is she human or something else? The crowd murmured. Some shouted insults. Others leaned forward, eager. The bell rang. Torvin did not charge. Not yet. He circled her slowly, axes held low, watching for any sign of movement. He expected tricks, smoke, venom, hidden blades. But Lila did nothing. She turned with him, always facing his center, never his weapons. You're not even trying to dodge, he said. I do not need to. He lunged. Not a full strike, a test. A slash aimed to cut air near her neck to force a reaction. She did not flinch. The plasma edge passed within a finger's width of her skin. Heat rippled off it, making her hair stir. Still nothing. He tried again. Faster. This time a diagonal cut toward her ribs. She shifted her weight, just enough, and the blade whistled past. No wasted motion, no panic, just precision. Torvin frowned. He had fought ghosts, machines, and monsters, but never someone who moved like water around stone. He stepped back, activated his armor's shield emitter. A faint blue dome shimmered around him. Now he said, "Try to touch me." Lila looked at the shield, then at him. "You hide behind light. It's not hiding. It's control." "Control is an illusion," she said, "especially here." She took one step forward. Torvin swung both axes in a wide arc, forcing her back. She retreated, but not fast, just enough to stay out of reach. He pressed, driving her toward the edge of the pit. The crowd roared, sensing victory. But Lila was not being driven. She was guiding. When her heel touched the boundary line, she stopped. Torvin grinned and raised both axes for a finishing overhead strike. The crowd held its breath. Then Lila moved. Not away, not sideways. Forward. She stepped into his swing, inside the arc of his arms, so close her breath brushed his chest plate. Torvin's eyes widened. No one had ever closed that distance. His shield flickered, overloaded by proximity protocols. For half a second it dropped. In that half second, Lila brushed her fingertips against the seam of his armor, just below his collarbone. A tiny touch, barely there. Torvin froze, his arms locked mid-swing. His breath caught. His eye flickered wildly. He tried to move, to shout, to activate his emergency override, but his muscles would not obey. His body stood rigid, trembling slightly as if caught between command and collapse. Lila stepped back, looked up at him. "You're not broken," she said. "Just seen." The crowd fell silent. No one understood what had happened. No weapon, no explosion, no blood. Yet their champion stood motionless, eyes wide, with something no one had ever seen in them before. Fear. Not of death, but of being known. Kale leapt from her shoulder and landed lightly on the sand. He walked toward Torvin, wings half spread, and sat at his feet, watching. Medics rushed forward, scanners in hand. They circled Torvin, confused. Vital signs stable, neural activity normal. No toxins detected, yet he could not move. The judges conferred. This was not a forfeit, not a knockout. It was something else entirely. Finally, the head judge stepped to the edge of the pit. "Fighter Torvin, can you continue?" Torvin's lips moved. No sound came out at first. Then hoarsely he whispered, "I yield." The word hit the crowd like a shockwave. Yield. Not lost, not beaten, yielded by choice. A murmur spread. Then silence. Then a single clap. Then another. Soon the entire arena was applauding, not for violence, but for something rarer. Respect. Lila did not bow, did not smile. She simply turned and walked toward the exit. Kale padding beside her. As she passed Torvin, she paused. "You fought well," she said, "but my world eats pride for breakfast." He could not respond, but his eyes followed her until she disappeared into the shadows. Back in her cell, the door sealed behind her. She sat on the cot and finally let her shoulders drop. The fight had not been physical. It had been deeper, heavier. She had not just faced Torvin. She had faced the idea of him, the myth, the legend, the belief that strength meant domination, and she had shown him another way. Kale curled up at her feet. "You did not use the full venom." "No. He did not deserve that. He only needed to see the edge." "You think he will change? He already has." Outside, the station buzzed with news. The Iron Champion had yielded. The Deathworlder girl had won without throwing a punch. Bets were voided. Legends rewritten. But in the high spires, others watched. Not with admiration. With calculation. A council member in silver robes turned off the feed. "Send word to the silent fleets. The Deathworlder is active." Another voice, smooth and cold, replied. "She must be contained. Or recruited or erased." "No," the first said. "Not erased. Studied. If one like her exists, others may follow. And we are not ready for what walks out of the dark when Deathworlders rise." Deep in her cell, Lila closed her eyes. She felt the shift in the air. The weight of new eyes upon her. She had expected it. The arena was never the goal. It was the message. And now, across the stars, the message was spreading. She stood and walked to the small mirror on the wall. Her reflection stared back. Pale skin, silver eyes, pointed ears. Not human, not elf. Something in between. Something forged in fire and silence. Kale looked up. "What now?" "Now," she said. "We wait for the next one brave enough or foolish enough to challenge what they do not understand." And somewhere, far beyond Virelli's prime, a ship changed course. Its destination unknown, its purpose clear, the hunt had begun. After the match with Torvin, the lower spires of Virelli's prime changed, not in structure, not in light or sound, but in feeling. The air carried a new kind of quiet, the kind that comes after thunder. People spoke in lower voices. Guards walked with their hands near their weapons but did not draw them. Even the vendors stopped shouting. They watched Lila when she passed, not with fear, but with something closer to awe. She did not leave her cell for 2 days. No one came to collect her. No guards, no clerks, no challengers. The syndicate had no rules for what she had done. She had not killed, not even fought in the way they understood. She had simply stood, and a champion had broken against her like a wave on stone. On the third morning, a soft knock came at her door, not the usual hiss of the lock. A real knock. 3 taps, spaced evenly. Lila opened the door. A young girl stood there, no older than 12, wrapped in a patched thermal coat too big for her frame. Her eyes were wide, dark, and full of something Lila recognized. Hunger, not for food. "For hope they sent me," the girl whispered. "From the underrings. They say you don't hurt people. They say you just show them." Lila said nothing, just waited. The girl held out a small data chip sealed in wax. "For you. From someone who remembers Earth." Lila took it. The wax was stamped with a symbol, a spiral inside a circle. An old mark. One her mother had carved into their doorframe before the sky burned. "Thank you," Lila said. The girl nodded once and ran off, boots clattering down the corridor. Back inside, Lila inserted the chip into the wall terminal. A voice played. Female, calm, aged by time and radiation. "Lila, if you hear this, you have walked the path. Do not trust the silence of the high spires. They watch. They always watch. The fleets are moving. They fear what you represent, not your strength. Your choice. You chose not to kill. That is more dangerous than any weapon." The message ended. Lila removed the chip and crushed it in her palm. Kale, who had been resting on the cot, lifted his head. "They know you are here. They always knew," she said. "They just needed proof I was real. And now they will send someone who does not yield." As if on cue, the station's public address system crackled to life. A smooth, measured voice filled every corridor, every market stall, every cell. "Attention, all citizens. By order of the Galactic Oversight Council, a special exhibition match has been authorized, effective immediately. Challenger designation Alpha 9. Opponent Lila of Earth. Match to commence at dawn. No forfeits accepted. No substitutions. Winner takes legacy, loser Disappears, the voice cut off. Silence returned, heavier than before. Kale stood. They are not playing by arena rules anymore. No, Lila said. This is not a fight. It is a test. Who is Alpha 9, someone who has never lost, because they were never allowed to. She walked to the corner of the room and pulled a thin cloth from her pack. Inside was a short blade, not metal but blackened bone carved with spirals. Her mother's last gift. She had never drawn it, not once. You will use it, Kale said, only if I must. Dawn came too soon. This time there was no crowd, no vendors, no bets. The arena was sealed. Only council observers sat in the high balconies, faces hidden behind reflective visors. The pit had been cleaned, sterilized. Even the sand was new, white, fine, untouched. Lila entered alone. Kale stayed behind by her order. This fight was hers, not his. Her opponent stood at the far end, tall, armored in seamless gray alloy that absorbed light. No helmet, no markings. Just a face, smooth, ageless, eyes like polished obsidian. No emotion, no tension, just stillness. The stillness of something that had never known doubt. Alpha 9. The figure did not speak, did not move, just watched. The bell did not ring. Instead, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. The match had begun. Lila walked forward, slowly, barefoot on the white sand. Each step left a faint imprint. Alpha 9 did not react, did not shift stance, did not blink. Halfway across the pit, Lila stopped. You are not human, she said. No, the figure replied, voice genderless, toneless. I am perfected. Perfected by whom be those who saw the flaw in freedom, in choice. In mercy, you were made to kill. I was made to end threats. You are one. Lila's hand hovered near her belt where the bone blade rested. You do not understand what I am. I understand efficiency. You waste time. You spare enemies. You speak when silence would kill faster. You are flawed. Flaws are what make us grow, she said. Growth is chaos. Chaos is weakness. Alpha 9 moved, not with speed, with certainty. One moment still, the next already inside Lila's space. A hand shot toward her throat. Fingers tipped with microblades that hummed with kinetic charge. Lila twisted, but not fast enough. The tips grazed her neck. A thin line of blood appeared. She felt the sting, the cold burn of nanites trying to flood her system. She stepped back, drawing the bone blade in one smooth motion. It made no sound, no flash, just a sliver of shadow in her hand. Alpha 9 tilted its head. Primitive. It attacked again, faster this time. Strikes aimed at joints, nerves, eyes. Lila blocked with the blade, parried with her forearm, dodged by bending her spine like a reed in wind. But she was bleeding now. From her neck, her shoulder, her side. Each cut small but precise. Meant to weaken. To drain. You cannot win, Alpha 9 said. I do not tire. I do not fear. I do not hesitate. Lila said nothing. She breathed, listened, watched the way the light bent around its armor, the way its feet pressed into the sand, just slightly deeper on the left. A micro-fault in its balance. Oh, damage hidden. She feinted left. Alpha 9 countered. She spun right, slashing low. The bone blade scraped against its knee joint. Sparks flew, not metal, but something harder. The armor cracked. Just a hairline fracture. Alpha 9 paused. For the first time, its head turned fully toward her. You see too much. I see what you hide, it charged. Not with technique. With force. A full-body tackle meant to crush. Lila dropped flat, rolling under the impact. As she came up, she drove the bone blade into the crack in its knee. The blade did not pierce, but it vibrated, resonated, tuned to a frequency her mother had whispered into it long ago. A death note for machines that wore flesh. Alpha 9 staggered. Its leg locked. Systems flickered. For 3 seconds it was vulnerable. Lila did not strike to kill. She stepped close, pressed her palm to its chest plate and whispered a single word in a language no human should know. The word meant surrender. Alpha 9 froze. Not from venom, not from pain, from memory. Deep in its core, buried under layers of programming, something stirred. A fragment, a ghost, a human mind that had once screamed before it was silenced. Its eyes flickered, human brown for a split second, then returned to black. It dropped to one knee, not from damage, from choice. The observers in the balcony stood. One activated a comm. Terminate the unit. It has been compromised. No, Lila said. Loud enough to carry. She stood over Alpha 9, blade lowered. You were never just a weapon. You were someone. Before they took you. Alpha 9 looked up, voice trembling, almost human. Who was Ilila knelt, placed a hand on its shoulder. You were enough. Just as you were. The observers shouted orders. Security drones descended from the ceiling, weapons humming. Lila stood, faced them. If you destroy it, you prove my point, that you fear anything that chooses. The lead observer hesitated, then signaled the drones to stand down. The match was over. Alpha 9 rose slowly, limping. It looked at Lila one last time, then turned and walked out of the arena, head high, no longer a weapon, but not yet free. Lila sheathed her blade. The first time it had been drawn. The last time it would bleed. As she walked back to her cell, the station felt different again. Not quieter, not safer, but changed. As if something old had cracked open, letting in a sliver of light. Kale waited at the door. You used the blade only to remind, not to kill. He nuzzled her hand. You showed them that even their perfect killer could choose. Yes, she said, and now they know the truth. What truth? That Deathworlders do not fight to destroy. They fight to awaken. Far above, in the high spires, the council met in emergency session. The Deathworlder could not be controlled, could not be predicted, could not be erased without making her a martyr. One voice, older than the rest, spoke softly. Then we do not fight her. We follow her. And across the galaxy, on a dozen hidden worlds, others heard the news. A girl with silver eyes had made a perfect killer kneel. Not with force, with truth. They began to move. Quietly, slowly, toward the light. Lila sat on her cot, watching the door. She knew they would come. Not with weapons, with questions. And for the first time, she was ready to answer. The days after the match with Alpha 9 passed in strange quiet. No more summons came. No guards, no messengers. Even the usual hum of the lower spires seemed muted, as if the station itself held its breath. Lila stayed in her cell, not out of fear, but because she knew the next move was not hers to make. She sat by the small ventilation grate, listening to the distant thrum of ships docking and departing. Kale lay coiled near her feet, eyes closed but alert, his breathing slow and steady like distant tides. On the fifth morning, a new sound broke the silence, not boots, not alarms, but the soft whir of a diplomatic skiff landing on the private pad outside the arena complex. No one used that pad. It was reserved for council envoys and high-tier dignitaries. Yet the ship bore no markings, just smooth white hull and open ramp. Lila stood. She knew who it was. She walked out of her cell without waiting for permission. The guards who usually stood at the corridor's end were gone. The doors opened for her as if expecting her. She stepped into the arena's outer ring, barefoot, wearing the same simple tunic she had worn since arrival. Kale followed, wings folded tight against his back. At the base of the skiff ramp stood a figure in a long gray coat, face hidden beneath a hood. Not armored, not armed, just still. Waiting, Lila stopped 10 paces away. You came alone, I did, the figure said, voice soft, female, older than it sounded. I bring no weapons, no demands. Then why are you here to offer what you have already won? A seat, a voice, a place among those who shape the stars. Lila did not move. I do not shape stars. I walk beneath them. You made a champion yield. You made a perfect weapon kneel. You did not kill. You revealed. That is more powerful than conquest. Power is noise, Lila said. I prefer silence. Silence speaks loudest when others finally listen. The figure lowered her hood. Her face was lined with age and experience, but her eyes were sharp, clear, and human. She wore no insignia, but Lila recognized the spiral tattoo behind her ear, an old Earth symbol nearly extinct. You are from the Silent Fleets, Lila said. Once. Now I serve no flag, only the future. And what future is that one where Deathworlders are not feared but understood? Where your kind does not hide in the dark, but walks in the light. You showed us that strength does not require cruelty, that mercy is not weakness. That is a lesson the galaxy has forgotten. Lila looked past her to the skiff. Where would you take me, wherever you wish to go? The fleets have ships waiting, colonies ready to listen. Even Earth. Whispers say it still breathes beneath the ash. Lila's expression did not change, but something shifted in her posture. A slight softening like ice under early sun. She glanced at Cale. He looked back. Your mother would say go. Not for power, but for those who come after. She turned to the envoy. I will not sit on your council. The woman nodded. I did not expect you to. I will not speak for all Deathworlders. No one can. I will not be a symbol. Then be a guide. Lila was silent for a long time. The wind from the docking bay stirred her hair. Far above, a transport ship roared into the void. Life went on, as it always did. Finally, she stepped forward, one step, then another, until she stood at the base of the ramp. I go not as your ally, she said, but as a witness. That is enough. Cale leapt onto her shoulder as she climbed the ramp. The envoy followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The skiff lifted off without fanfare, rising through the rings of Virelli's prime, past the neon alleys and rusted markets, past the arena where legends had been rewritten. Below, in the pit, a single white footprint remained in the sand, already fading. Back in the high balconies, Dax Torvin watched the skiff vanish into the stars. He wore no armor now, just simple clothes, his eye dimmed. He had not fought since his match with Lila. Instead, he walked the lower spires, listening, learning. People spoke to him differently now, not with fear, but with questions. He touched the spot on his chest where her fingers had brushed him. The place still tingled, not with pain, but with memory. She had not broken him. She had woken him. Farther out, in the underrings, the young girl who had delivered the message stood on a rooftop, watching the same sky. She clutched a small carving, a dragon and a girl made from scrap metal. She did not know where Lila had gone, but she knew she would return, or others like her would, because the message had spread. On a mining colony near the rim, a boy with pointed ears stood up to an overseer and did not flinch. On a trade moon, a woman with silver eyes walked into a syndicate hall and left without paying tribute. On a forgotten outpost, a child whispered a word in an old tongue, and the machines paused. The change was slow, quiet, but real. Aboard the skiff, Lila sat by the viewport, watching the stars blur into streaks of light. The envoy offered her water. She accepted it with a nod. You never told me your name, the envoy said. Names are cages, Lila replied. I am what I do, and what will you do now, Walk? Listen. Remind. The envoy smiled faintly. That is more than enough. Cale stretched on her lap, purring like distant thunder. He knew the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, more councils, more tests. But this time they would not be alone, because the galaxy had seen what happened when a Deathworlder girl stood calmly in the arena, and her opponent gave up not from fear, but from understanding. And in that moment something old began to die, and something new began to breathe. The skiff jumped to warp, vanishing into the dark between stars, not as a weapon, not as a legend, but as a quiet truth, moving through the silence, waiting for the world to catch up. And somewhere, deep in the void, another ship turned toward the same path, then another, and another. The Deathworlders were coming, not to conquer, to remember.